Blackhawks fans, welcome back. If you were with us earlier, at least, welcome back to you to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. We were live a little bit earlier. I'm Ron Luce, GM Ron, back with you here again. We were live a little bit earlier. Steve and I were on for the first 5 picks. We talked a little bit about the Anton Frondell pick, which feels like a millennium ago because that was such a long first round. But the Blackhawks ended up making 2 additional picks in the draft. Had 25, they stayed put there and made a pick, and then they traded into the first round again for a second straight year. We're going to talk about that a little bit later as well at number 29 and made another pick. But before we get going on things, I want to give love to the comments section. David, you were first, my friend. He says, I like the picks, and Frondell will be a star. It would be good to see a shot and a goal, and always, dudes. What's going on? And yo's all the way around. Yes, welcome back, everybody. I know it's late. It was a long first round, and that's kind of what I want to vent just quickly about first. How disgustingly long this first round was. And it wasn't much longer, according to a couple of people that I was kind of like additionally tuned in with during that first round than last year's draft. But holy hell, is that a long draft that doesn't need to be that long? It's crazy how the NBA draft first round's over in 2 hours. And in the NHL, they drag it out to pretty much almost a 4-hour event. If we're being brutally honest, that was a 4.5-hour event. And unfortunately, the first pick wasn't made until like 6:15. This feels like Chicago Blackhawks puck drop time back during the Cup days where they would say 7 and it was really like 7:15. Something else, man. I'll tell you what, the screen thing was cringy as hell. Did not like that. I think that conversation with the front office and the player being publicized was gross. I didn't like that at all. Don't like that at all, if I'm being truthful. And then on top of that, just the ESPN panel isn't my favorite. Again, it could have been such a better broadcast, but it was still fun to ebb and flow. I wish we had more trades. There was a lot of pick movement, but it was just pick movement. Obviously, all the big player trades happened a little bit earlier in the day. For example, Noah Dobson moving on from the New York Islanders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just my quick little bitch about the product that was the NHL draft. Let's get into the meat and potato, shall we? We talked a little bit about the Anton Frondell pick in kind of raw reaction, Steve and I, a little bit earlier. And Skokes is 100% right, disrupting my thought process here, but he's spot on. The presentation was way too Hollywood, like literally the definition of Hollywood. 4 hours. Yeah, it really was. And you could tell it's Southern California. Hell, McQueen, the Ducks pick, got to Disneyland and back by the time they had like the 28th overall pick in a helicopter. Like, and that trip from LA to Anaheim is like not super short. So it was kind of crazy. I mean, that just shows you how quickly, how long that took and how quickly he was able to get around. But let's talk a little bit more about the Frondell pick. Steve and I reacted to it a little bit earlier. Knowing what we knew prior to the bullshit rumors earlier in the week about the Sharks liking Frondell and all of this, I was good with the Frondell pick. Hell, I feel like I was one of the first people to say Frondell was probably the name. I think it's the right pick. I genuinely do. And the reason I say that is Frondell has a lot of what you like in a potential NHL player. And yes, he was playing at Sweden's essentially second level. He wasn't playing in the SHL. Probably could graduate to the SHL next season if he does return, because he had such a good season at the one level lower. But I think what is most impressive is, he's not the worst skater in the world. He's certainly not their other 2 picks. But yeah, I like what David has to say here. They needed a dude with a rocket of a shot. You've got Bedard, who's got a wicked shot, but there's a lot of other guys. They don't have that guy that's just a pure sniper. And I really do believe that Frondell's going to have that ability. He also plays a 200-foot game. Again, I think Barkov was a fair comparison, stylistically speaking, to a guy like Frondell. And on top of that, he can play both the wing and center. He can do both. He's been playing the wing over in Sweden. I don't think that's out of the question. So it wouldn't affect if they wanted to leave Bedard and both the Bedard and Nazar at center positions. Maybe he does take one of those two. Who knows? I know there's a lot of people that say move Bedard to wing. In one game that I witnessed Bedard there, I think he disappeared. I think he just thrives better at the center position. Nazar, I think, is the player that would translate better to the wing. Who knows? Regardless, I really believe that things are going to be good. And David's got another great point here. The fact his stats in the Swedish league were as high as Peter Forsberg's is eye-popping. It is. It's a hard league to play in. Like the Swedish leagues in general aren't high-scoring leagues. So if you put up almost point per game like numbers, that's impressive, genuinely. And that's just kind of how it works over there. So this is a guy that I believe is going to be given every opportunity to make the roster as an 18-year-old. Do I believe he's going to do it? We'll see. I don't think it's a lock by any stretch of imagination. I think Misa was probably more of a lock had he gotten to the Hawks at 3. But overall, I really, really like the Frondell pick. I think it's what they needed. They got some size. They got a big body. I also like that Frondell, it kind of plays with a little bit of an edge. He can go to the front of the net. There was a lot of his goals scored on the doorstep of the net. Hawks don't have a ton of guys that can do that. I think this draft, they continue to stockpile players that they don't have. And of course, that's ideal for balance and, kind of the what you need on a roster to win games, as we saw with the Florida Panthers now for 2 consecutive seasons. But they're starting to get that quality mix of guys. And I think Frondell is going to kind of lead another piece of that charge moving forward. But then as we push forward, I think the 20 pick at 25, Vaklav Nestrasil, I think was a guy that a lot of Hawks fans wanted. Our friend, the prospect Don, listed him as a possibility at that pick. Huge, 6'6". He's a monster. He's only 185 pounds, so he can certainly fill out. And according to Elite Prospects, has the ability. He plays with an edge. He'll finish checks. He's a great skater, a big winger. Can score a little bit, put up really respectable numbers in the USHL with the Muskegon Lumberjacks last season, 40-plus points in about 60 games. He's committed to go play at the University of Massachusetts in the NCAA, so he'll be taking that collegiate route next year. Another guy that you add size, you add speed, you add things. He's got some of that ability. Dare I say Ilya Mikheyev-esque player? But bigger? I mean, that's kind of the feel that I get from this. And when you have those guys that are able to skate gracefully, but are huge and will finish checks and give you that kind of tenacity, especially on the forecheck, that's a winning recipe. And Frondell is a guy that can certainly forecheck. I think Nestrasil is also another one. So it really felt like the Hawks kind of dipped into the bag that they wanted to twice and got players that reflected the same kind of, I'll call it style that Kyle Davidson wants to build, right? We know he likes speed in his forwards. We're starting to see a lot more size in some of these guys that are coming up. Not everybody's Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard, who are a little bit on the smaller side. They're starting to get some of these guys with some size. And they were able to pull it off. I think the Nestrasil pick is great for the value that you get him at there at 25. There was a couple of guys there that made some sense. Malcolm Spence, I know, was a name that a lot of people liked that was thrown around. Ultimately, they go with a big winger with a huge frame. He's got ability to grow and fill out into that frame. And him going to the NCAA level, a league that just continues to get better and better for ice hockey, is going to be, I think, huge for his development moving forward as well. And then the final pick. So again, we thought there was only going to be 2. This felt very reminiscent of last season, where we thought there was only going to be 2. But instead, Kyle Davidson comes back in yet again to the first round for a second consecutive year, like Derby Knowledge 93 says here. Costa, go big or go home. And he did. He traded the 2 second-rounders that the Hawks have in this year's draft, 34 and 62, along with a 5th-round pick in 2027. So it's 2 years from now. for Mason West at the 29th overall selection. Another trade with the Carolina Hurricanes. It's also 2 years in a row that they've traded with Carolina for that first round pick. So Carolina and the Hawks, good friends in making picks and being able to connect. Yeah, you're right, Anthony Tony. It is kind of deja vu all over again. And I want to kind of highlight that in a minute as well. But let's talk first about Mason West. He's one of the most fascinating prospects in this draft. And it's not necessarily for that he's a guaranteed talent, but nobody knows about him or anything like that. This guy was drafted out of high school. Adina is a high school program in Minnesota. Now, granted, Adina is an incredible high school, probably one of the best, if not the best, in the entire country. But he dominated at the high school level. 27 goals in like 31 games. He had over 40 points total, I think just short of 50 in 31 games. Yeah, 49. It was 49 and 31. I mean, this guy is incredible. He's a great skater, which is something that obviously the Blackhawks value. He's got a really strong shot. He's got playmaking ability. He did play some games in the USHL last year as well. Took that leap as a young player and performed pretty well. 9 points in 10 games for the Fargo Force. Certainly was a respectable contributor. Did not, get overshadowed by the spotlight whatsoever. But also, as Anthony Tony points out here, this guy can play emergency quarterback too. He is the quarterback of his high school football team. He's actually going back in the fall now to play high school football. His last senior season, he is committed to hockey, but he's going back to play. He's a quarterback, 6'6", another huge dude. And on top of that, he was getting college interest to play quarterback. So this is a freakish athlete, a guy that can do it all. And on top of that, he's going to Michigan State, a great program in the NCAA, a program that has an outside shot at getting a player like Gavin McKenna to be a part of that program. Obviously, Artem Levshinov came from that program. The Blackhawks have familiarity with Michigan State. So there's probably some excitement as well that he's going to such a strong NCAA program to continue his development. This guy kind of feels like the wild card of Kyle Davidson's selections here. We don't know what he's going to be, genuinely. Nobody knows. I think he's probably one of the prospects that people feel the least confident about. They just know he's really good, and he's got kind of a crazy ceiling. Who knows what he can become? But I would love to see him continue to develop, continue to be a playmaker, a sniper. He says, according to himself, that Tage Thompson is the player he molds his game around. If he became a Tage Thompson-like player, I would be over the moon about what that says. Anthony Tony also said they went huge with those last two picks. Yes, they did. David Talks Broncos says, I'm all about taking chances on elite athletes, and West is that 1,000%, David. Well put. He says Minnesota high school hockey is like Texas or Florida for high school football. If you dominate, you're on a professional path. This is also 100% correct. And Anthony also says, hopefully no more worries about the Hawks having big center prospects. West is through Dean Letourneau of this draft. They do have a ton of center prospects now. And here's the beauty of that. Guys that don't work out at center can easily be moved to wing more often than not. So to say, excuse me, right? I don't know what the hell is going on with my allergies today, but I am struggling all of a sudden. But what we will see is that Kyle Davidson is not afraid to take calculated swings. And, Letourneau, thank you, Dean Letourneau. I think what's going to be is so funny, though, is Davidson stuck to a very similar strategy that he did too last year. Anthony Tony said, right, it felt like deja vu all over again. It really did. Like, at a nauseating kind of parallel. Number 3, they take Anton Frondell. The sexy pick would have been Misa, right? Or maybe Porter Martone for some people. Or James Higgins for some people. But they stuck to their guns. They took Frondell. Last year, they stuck to the guns and they took Artem Levshinov. The sexy pick would have been Ivan Demidov, who, again, reportedly they tried to come up and get from Columbus. It just didn't work out because there was the ability to pass on. They weren't going to pass on Caden Lindstrom. Thanks, Anaheim. Had to go screw it up. Anthony Tony also says here, he was a Dewane guy, right? Another name that people were high. So maybe a little controversy at the third pick again, right? Or the high pick of the draft, similar to last year. Their second pick, they stuck to their guns, right? They were the 18th pick last year. They were the 25th pick this year. They stuck at that pick. And they took a player out of the Muskegon Lumberjacks. Sasha Boisvert was drafted out of Muskegon of the USHL. So that's 2 years in a row now that they go get a forward who's college bound from a USHL program with that second pick. And then the third pick is kind of a flyer pick. Maybe more so this year than last year, arguably. But last year they trade back in. Again, Carolina was the trade for both years as well. Haha, LOL. And they go on and they get another guy that has huge upside. Last year it was Vanacker, a guy that they were pumped to get when they did, was injured, right? So he was kind of a little bit more of a maybe. People weren't sure, but he put up great production, had a really good season this year. West is not from an injury standpoint, but just maybe from because he played at high school, but he's an unreal athlete and people don't know what his future looks like. It's funny how these 2 years compared so much over the course of how the first round shook out. Kyle Davidson's got a method, and he stuck to it again for a second year in a row. A couple more comments here. David asks, do you think they could convince West to skip football and go straight to the USHL or MSU? He doesn't want a Kyler Murray situation happening. Haha. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I don't think he plans on playing football at Michigan State. We'll see. Maybe they do try to convince him. I don't know how, because if he does go to Michigan State, he can get NIL money, and I don't know what the Hawks are going to be able to do. Even if you sign him to his entry level until he's playing in your organization, it doesn't matter. So I'll be intrigued to see what happens there. Anthony says he's not going to root against Frondell like the Demidov guys root against Levshinov. That I will agree with. A very different feel to it this year. And I agree with David. These prospects do have a lot to offer. And again, more than ever, the NHL draft is a crapshoot. My favorite statistic I've ever read about the NHL draft stated that the odds of a player drafted outside of the top 10 in the first round getting to the NHL and sticking are like the same odds as a third round pick getting there. It's all about how you develop these players. Are they in the right situations? And I think that's why the NCAA is going to become such a huge route for these guys, because it's going to be as good, if not better, than the CHL. And we're seeing it. Their second two picks are guys that are going to college at some point in the near future, right? Obviously, for West, he's obviously not going to start there yet. But Massachusetts is calling for Nestrasil. I really do believe that they have a plan. They have these guys that they like and they believe that will fit the way they want to play. And it's hard not to feel a sense of optimism. They certainly didn't make any picks that you scratched your head and went, what the fuck is that? The West pick maybe was a little bit of surprise, but not necessarily for a bad reason. Maybe just people not expecting Mason West to be the target. So I really, really like what Kyle Davidson did. I know there's some people that might feel that it was a little rich what they gave up to move up for West, but I think West is such a wild card. He had a chance to go before the night was over. So them jumping up to 29 to get him, and again, giving up some seconds, and you still have a ton of picks. You have a pick in the third round, a couple picks in the fourth round, a sixth rounder, and two in the seventh. They've got tons of capital still for the rest of Saturday. And again, you can get more calculated. They've had so many years of so many picks. You can be more calculated and get aggressive this late now if there's guys that you truly believe in and want to go for. Still, it asks here, he says, are you surprised that Higgins fell to 7? I am and I'm not. And the reason I say that is because I genuinely believe that he was certainly in play anywhere from 4 to 7. But I'm not surprised that Brady Martin shot up boards because that was being reported because a lot of people see a Sam Bennett-esque player in him. I think Dewaney going that high wasn't super shocking either. Mark Tone was in that group and company as well. So it kind of makes a little bit of sense him falling to 7. And I think it's a good fit. I think Boston gets a player that's in their backyard collegiately, and it feels like a good move for many. But I think he's going to be a fun one to see what happens here. We got some good commentary back and forth in the comment sections is right. Chuck Fee 23 here says, once you're in the second half of the NHL draft, nothing is a sure bet. So you might as well bet on the kids you think have the highest upside. 100%. And I think that's exactly what Kyle Davidson did here. Stolid Breezing asks, Blackhawks scouting director Mike Donaghy, and he said he asked Anton Frondell to combine if he saw himself as a center or a wing. Frondell responded, whatever Connor doesn't play, I'll play. Hell yeah, get him up there on that line. That's awesome, right? I think you get excited when you hear that kind of stuff as well. Who cares what they gave up? Hawks need quality, not quantity. That I also agree with. Again, you're at a point in the rebuild. They've had so many years of multiple first-round picks, multiple, picks in every round, especially the high rounds. Kyle Davidson was very clear about that being his vision when they were rebuilding through the draft. Lots of swings in those first, 100 picks of the draft. They've done that for multiple years now. You can get a little more aggressive now, especially in a weaker draft. This is the year if you're going to do shit like that. Oh, hey, we don't love a lot of what's in the second round, but we really like this guy. Go up and get him. I think it's a calculated swing that makes a ton of sense. Surprised Eklund fell so far. I am also surprised. I thought the Hawks were going to be able to pull off the improbable and get Eklund at 25. But, I mean, for him to fall into the teens, I think a lot of that's just size. And people are maybe concerned that Frondell drove a lot of that line. But I think it's pretty equal amongst the two of them. Of course, we'll see what happens going forward. David asks here, do you think Frondell makes the team? He says I think he could if they don't sign anyone in free agency. I don't think they're really going to sign a lot of people in free agency, if you want my honest opinion. I think you're getting a depth defenseman. I would love to see Marc-Edouard Vlasic so he can come and play with his cousin in Chicago because he just got bought out by the San Jose Sharks right before the draft. But that being said, I think up front at forward, I think they're largely set. So I agree. I think he's going to be given every opportunity to make the Blackhawks roster out of camp. I really do. I think they're gonna play him in every preseason game, see what he does, and go from there. And I mean, if he's able to impress and make the roster, I think that's great. And if he doesn't, he goes back to Sweden for 1 year, and then you'll certainly probably see him, if not in Rockford, for sure in the NHL the season after. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. But I think he's going to get every opportunity to make the roster. I really, really do when it's all said and done. Chuck believes here he thinks he would benefit from the AHL, step up from the league he was in Sweden, get some in your development program and adjust to North American hockey. I like that idea too. The only reason I don't think that happens unless they wildly convince him that it's worth it. He pretty much said, unless he's playing in Chicago, he's going back to Sweden. So there is opportunity for him to graduate to the SHL, which is the top league in Sweden. If he plays there, I mean, that's probably comparable to the AHL, if I'm being brutally honest. So I don't necessarily hate that he would go back, but I like the idea of, you get him acclimated to North American ice if he plays in Rockford. And then also, people would flock to Rockford to watch Frondell play, which I think would be cool too. And it would certainly be good for the Hawks now that they own the Ice Hogs. The NHL needs to streamline the draft. I agree. 4.5 hours. Disgusting. It was way too long. Vlasic would be great unless he's Brody the sequel. Yeah, I hope he's not Brody the sequel either when it's all said and done. But I really like that one's just kind of more for fun. Again, I think the really funny one would be Ryan Suter. And then you could say that Ryan Suter and Shea Weber are both Blackhawks legends as well as Nashville Predator legends, which I think would be funny. And it would just piss off Preds fans, which I certainly enjoy. Still a breezing with another great comment. He says, what grade do you give KD for the first round? A, B, C, D, or F? I hate that E is not a grade. I think that's stupid. But anyway, just intrusive late night thoughts because I'm tired. I would give KD an A. You got bigger, you got faster, you got more skilled. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think they did anything that makes people go, ooh. If you want to be more conservative per se, I'd say you could say a B. I really think though he gets an A. I think he teeters on that A minus B plus range. I really do. I think it's a good draft. Obviously it's a lot of we'll see, but he stuck to his approach. We've seen this approach from Kyle Davidson before. So I think because he stuck to his guns and they stuck to what they believe, and they've seemingly done pretty well with talent evaluation thus far under the Davidson regime. I think it's an A. I think you did exactly what you wanted to do coming into this draft. And in a less talented draft, you went and got 3 guys that they probably feel pretty good about. And now you can sit back until the 3rd round tomorrow and just kind of see how the board shakes out and go from there. I think it's a great move when it's all said and done. And Chuck says 90s fans would get the dust off their old Suter jerseys. They sure would. Wouldn't that be fun? That was part of the reason I said Ryan Suter as well. The family connection would be a good time. Another comment here. Oh, excuse me. David says, I know there was light speculation about trading Korchinski this offseason, but he's guessing that ship has sailed now. He really hopes he makes strides in the show flashes they hope for. I think he's going to get every opportunity in Rockford. I don't think he's going to make the NHL. And I think that's okay. You're already going to have one of the youngest blue lines in hockey outside of Connor Murphy, who's 32, and Alex Vlasic, who's 24. The rest of that blue line could be guys that are 22 and younger. They're going to be young, but Korchinski can be the guy in Rockford, and I think they'll be just fine. So overall, folks, I really like what Kyle Davidson did tonight. I do. And I'm thrilled to be able to join everybody right after the draft like this and talk about it immediately and get some of those feelings. I'm going to watch probably a ton of tape on these guys now because I watched a decent amount already on Frondell, but more so Mason West if I can get my hands on any high school hockey stuff. And then, of course, Nestrasil in the USHL. Very excited to see those. Tony and Steve will be back again before the end of the weekend recapping Saturday's picks. I will unfortunately be out of town, so that's why I will not be on the next broadcast. But man, it was a good show. And yeah, thank you, David, for jumping in. And thanks everybody for jumping in. This was a great comment section, a great crowd, a great group. Not trying to keep everybody too late. This is just a raw reaction of how we're feeling after the draft's first round. Still plenty of picks on Saturday. And again, Tony and Steve will be back before the end of the weekend, not only giving their thoughts on the first round, and they'll have about 24 plus hours to think through things, but they're also going to, talk through kind of the day 2 picks, kind of what's to come in free agency. And then we get into the best stuff. And anybody that follows along here knows that GM Ron's favorite day of the year is July 1st. That's my Christmas morning. So I am genuinely excited about what's to come. And, again, even if it's not the Hawks doing a ton, I'm excited to see what the rest of the league does over the next handful of days. One final one here, not worried about KK. He's only 21, another year at Rockford. Absolutely. And Chuck, I agree with you here. A great chat, a lot of thought-provoking comments, questions from the group. So again, we appreciate you guys here at the Four Feathers podcast. If you don't already, we appreciate you guys jumping in and would love you to keep following us here at the Four Feathers podcast. You can find us at Four Feathers Pod on all the socials. You can also find us at OnTap Sportsnet. You're following along right here on the OnTap Sportsnet YouTube page if you're watching with us there, or Facebook. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit that little bell button. You'll know when we go live. And we've got all your other Chicago sports shows here covered. Cubs on tap, Sox on tap, Bears on tap, Bulls on tap, the whole nine. And would appreciate the love and support. First round in the books of the 2025 NHL Draft. And you can check out all the articles from tonight over at ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on the socials. And you can check out the rest of the weekend as well there over the course of the next 24 plus hours. The On Tap Sports Network, go and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. David R. with a quick comment here before we close things down. He's in Minnesota. West is playing hockey after high school. He is going forward with hockey and not football. Yes, I think it gives people a lot more just feel good about his position going forward. He's going to a great program in Michigan State, so he should develop properly. Appreciate everybody. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, let's go Hawks.